Play ball.
Hey, new baseball fans, and welcome to another edition of the Brushback with JP Ricciardi. I'm John Arezzi. There's so much going on in baseball right now, and who better to discuss it with than the former GM of the Toronto Blue Jays, top front office executive for multiple teams, baseball analyst for Nesson, JP. Welcome back for another week in the baseball trenches, JP.
Good to be here, John. A lot going on. We're getting to the nitty-gritty. It's getting a little tight in some places. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it certainly is. We got your hot takes on some of the big stories in baseball this week, JP, including a major statement that you put up on your social media accounts. You also have another great baseball insider for Batter Up today.
Yeah, we're bringing on Bob Tewksbury, a longtime Major League pitcher, but more importantly, a little deeper than that. I think a guy that has had to resurrect his career in different levels. And after his playing career, he went back to get his degree and went on to be a mental skills coach. So he's a well-rounded guy, very cerebral guy, and brings a lot to the table. And I think there's any young kids out there facing any kind of adversities from pitching injuries, he's a good lesson and a good voice to hear.
Well, we certainly look forward to that. So it's a great show for everyone today. So let's get right into it.
Sure.
JP's Hot Takes, brought to you by Percy's Appliance Outlet, featuring brand name appliances at up to 80% off regular retail prices. They're Worcester's largest dealer of home appliances and electronics, serving Worcester for over 80 years. They are your 80% off appliance outlet. Once again, go to Percy's.com. Check out all their great, everyday great deals, refrigerators, electronics, washers, dryers, bedding, so much more. Call 508-438-6800. Same day or next day delivery options available. That's Percy's. Go to Percy's.com. Well, JP, you made some news this week on your social media accounts by making an assessment of a player that you called the greatest baseball player who ever lived. I want to watch that clip with you right now and then talk about it on the other side.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. JP Ricciardi here, host of the podcast, The Brushback with JP. When you think of the great history of our game, think of the greatest players who have ever played. From Ruth, Aaron, Mays, DiMaggio, Williams, the list goes on and on. Ken Griffey Jr., so many players that you could put in the top 10 players who have ever played our game. But is it possible that we are watching the greatest player to ever play the game of baseball right now in Shohei Ohtani? He's on pace for 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. Clear-cut leader for the National League MVP. Has been the best player in our game for the last 5 to 6 years. I would love to hear from all our listeners and followers what your thoughts are on this, because I believe Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player who's ever lived.
JP, that is a major announcement from you. I mean, you've seen so many greats across the span of your life. Talk to us about what led you to make this public announcement.
Well, I think when you look at the game, and I have the utmost respect for what I think are maybe the top 10 players. Arguably, your 10 might differ from my 10, but I think we'd come up with the Mazes, the Ruths, the Aarons, the Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the Barry Bonds, the Mickey Mantles, the Ted Williams, the Joe DiMaggios, the Lou Gehrig's. I mean, maybe there's 25 guys we could argue about that are in the top 10. Outside of Babe Ruth, who has pitched successfully and hit successfully since Babe Ruth? It's Shohei Ohtani. And he's going to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases. So 40-40 was the bar. Now he's taken the 40-40 and he's taken it to 50-50. And I'm not so sure he won't take this to 60-60. And don't forget, John, excuse me, he hasn't even toed the rubber this year.
No.
So he's going to pitch next year. He's doing it at an elite level. I have a ton of respect for what Lindor has done. I think he's a great player. He helps his team on both sides of the ball. But this guy has done it, which leads me to why I made the comment. This isn't a one-year thing. This isn't a Jose Canseco 40-40 year and then kind of downhill from there. this guy keeps getting better, and he's on a plane to maybe go in a 10-year span where he's done this. So for me, how can you argue that he's not the greatest player who's ever played our game? Because he's doing it on both sides of the ball, and he's raising the bar. Bonds raised the bar. Aaron raised the bar. Ruth was the original bar raiser. Ty Cobb. But in my estimation, what this guy is doing in the game today, facing the pitching that the other guys didn't face, the 90 plus, the 95 plus, the exceptional relievers, for him to be able to do what he's doing, I see him as the greatest player who's ever played our game.
Well, I mean, he certainly is something that we've all never seen before. We all have to say that. And you mentioned the MVP. You mentioned that race. You brought up Lindor. And the fact that no DH, full-time DH, who's not played a defensive position, ever won an MVP, this is kind of a game changer in itself if Ohtani wins that MVP. In comparison, a guy like Lindor, who has had an incredible season, playing every game, clutch hitting, stellar defense. And without him, quite frankly, I don't think the Mets would be sniffing a postseason spot this year. So you think, JP, that Ohtani breaks that mold because it's never been done for a full-time DH before? And then, as you said, once again, he goes back to pitch next year. So give us your reasoning.
You have to keep in mind, John, he's only DHing because he's coming back from an arm injury. Yeah. Or he would be playing left field. So because he's DHing, he shouldn't be penalized because of an injury. And once again, I take my hat off to what Lindor has done. He's helping his team on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But this guy is going to account for so much production offensively, and he's just doing something no one else has done. It has to be recognized. So if we in the game don't recognize that, what are we going to recognize?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make a really good point there. So, 50-50, and you said maybe 60-60 sometime. You never know. But he is changing the game in ways that we've never seen before, at least in our lifetimes. JP, I want to get to the wild card races. NL, National League, 4 teams, 3 slots, just 2 games separate the Mets and Braves from the first and second spot leaders, the Padres and the Diamondbacks. Give us your hot take on this increasingly close race and the wild finish it promises.
Well, I'm looking at the standings right now, John, and for me, it's going to come down to the Mets and the Braves. And I think they play each other.
Yeah, the week September 22nd, 23rd, the Mets and Braves have 3 games left, and the Mets have the Phillies, obviously, for 7 games out of the next 10. And then you got the Diamondbacks and the Padres playing the last weekend of the season rather.
Yeah, and they're not too far off the pace from the Mets and the Braves are not too far off the pace from San Diego and Arizona. So
2 games.
Yeah, there you go. They're only 2 games back, which could be made up. I think obviously it's going to come down to who has the best pitching down the stretch. I like if I had to put a bet on someone. I think the Padres have the best combination right now. Arizona's playing, they're kind of playing up and down a little bit right now. Mets have been on fire, and the Braves, you have to take your hat off to what they've been able to do with so many injuries.
Yes.
If you're asking me to pick a team that's going to get knocked out, I think the Braves are going to be the one team that falters because I just don't think their pitching is going to hold up. But it's going to be really, really good to watch over the next few weeks. It's fun because every day you get up, you check the standings, and I think it's a 4-team race. I think ultimately my pick would be Atlanta dropping out.
Yeah,
the American League's a good race too. But I think
I was going to get into that with you. I mean, because it's either the Orioles or the Yankees winding up in the top spot. The Royals are up a couple of games over the Twins, and then you have the Tigers. Even the Red Sox and Mariners all in. It's separated by just 4 games. What's your hot take on that race?
Well, I think Detroit's played their best baseball, and if I look at their schedule, if I'm correct, I think the Tigers play the White Sox and another team, not a very good team. So let me check their schedule real fast. They're playing the Rockies right now, and then they end the season with the White Sox. So unfortunately, some of this is going to come down to how your schedule works in your favor.
Yeah.
So I like their schedule a little bit more favorable than maybe some of the other teams. But I think that's going to come down to Minnesota and Detroit fighting for the last spot. The Red Sox have really fallen off. Their team ERA has gone up and up and up each month, and they just seem to have hit a wall the last few weeks. And they have a very tough schedule to finish the season. So, like you said, Baltimore or the Yankees are going to secure that number one spot. I think Kansas City's in a really good spot, and I think it's going to come down to Detroit and Minnesota.
Yeah, I just love this time of year, and I watch the games every day, and I'm checking the scores, and it's so exciting, and that's why I love this new wild card system in place. It gives so many cities the opportunity to kind of be engaged.
John, let's get right to the point. Look at
yeah,
you're excited because the Mets are right in the playoff race.
I didn't expect it.
And exactly. So, I can understand why you're getting up. But the poor guy in Chicago with the White Sox, he's not checking the standings every day. So you got a horse in the race. And speaking of a horse in the race, John, I know you lost your childhood hero this week. So why don't you talk about Eddie Kranepool?
Yeah, I do want to get into that, JP, but we have a commercial break to take, and we'll be talking about Eddie Kranepool as soon as we hear this word from Percy's Home Appliance Outlet.
Percy's Appliance Outlet, next to our showroom on Gold Star Boulevard in Worcester, featuring brand name appliances at up to 80% off regular retail price and come with manufacturer's warranties. Contractors and property managers save even more with volume discounts. Fast, professional delivery, removal, and installation, or bring your vehicle and pick it up the same day. Shop online with long-term financing available at Percy's.com. Percy's Appliance Outlet, first on Gold Star Boulevard in Worcester.
JP, as we mentioned before the break, the New York Mets franchise lost one of their greatest ambassadors, Ed Kranepool, who played with the team from 1962 to 1979. Never played for another team. For me, I was 9 years old in 1966. It was July 3rd. My Uncle Sonny, my Uncle Anthony, he and I'd never been to a ball game, and I knew about baseball, but I was never really engaged in the game. And he's like, "Would you like to go see a baseball game?" And I said yes. And it was a hot July 3rd, and he was a diehard Yankee fan. And because the Yankees were out of town, the Mets were in town, so I went with him. And I just got from seeing the green grass at Shea sitting there and seeing this guy, number 7, Ed Kranepool. It was a doubleheader against the Pittsburgh Pirates, which the Mets split. But in those two games, Ed Kranepool got 3 hits in one game, including a home run. And he got another hit in the second game with another home run. And I was all in. I mean, but that was the day that kind of changed my life. It really did. Because from that day on, every single day, I was watching the Mets, reading the box score and I lived and died with every at bat from Ed Kranepool. I mean, it really touched me. In back of me, you could see that, I have that black and white picture of the 4 Mets starters in '69. And next to that is an artist drawing of Eddie Kranepool, which he signed for me. I got my Eddie Kranepool bobblehead. His book came out last year. And I got I met him and signed copy. I've talked to Eddie a few times, but it was such a devastating loss because he had come back. He had needed a kidney a few years ago when a Met fan donated a kidney to him, and he had another few years, and he died suddenly watching the Mets with a cardiac arrest. And it really has affected me because I love this guy, and he's the reason I'm such a Mets fanatic today. So question to you, when you were a little kid growing up, who was that guy for you? Who was that team? Obviously, it had to be Red Sox, but who was that guy that drew you in as you were getting exposed to baseball for the first time?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't need a guy to draw me into baseball because my dad was an ex-minor league player.
There you
and
go,
my
in the
dad,
family.
We played a lot of baseball when I was young, but that led to me obviously watching as much baseball as I could. And my favorite player when I was growing up was Tony Canigliaro.
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
Italian.
He was Italian. He was from Massachusetts. He was young. And I remember when he got hit in the eye in '67.
Jack Hamilton.
Jack Hamilton. And I remember, crying that Tony Canigliaro was. I thought he was going to die. I mean, I was only like
Yeah.
8 years old, 9 years old. I didn't really understand what was happening. And then I'll never forget that picture in Sports Illustrated with
Oh
his eye,
yeah, yeah.
the purple of that eye, and I was devastated. And then to think that he came back with a hole in his eye, and he still hit 25 home runs
I
with
know.
basically one eye. So Tony C was my favorite player. I did like Yastrzemski, but not like in the same way I like Tony C. So I can understand, John. You lose a little bit of your childhood when one of your favorite players passes away, and I felt that way when Tony C passed away. He died tragically, and he died young.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of our youth goes that way, but you got to hold on to the great memories that they provided for not only you but so many Met fans. And Eddie Kranepool, from everything I understand, was a great guy and a New Yorker who played in New York. So that's pretty special.
At 17 years old, made his debut with Casey Stengel in 1962. But we'll never forget Eddie Kranepool and the accolades that are happening all over baseball. Even the Yankees did a tribute to him on their scoreboard. So what a loss. And the Mets have announced through their owners, Steve and Alex Cohen, that next season, for the entire season, there will be a number 7 on every Met uniform throughout the season. So rest in peace, Eddie Kranepool. And JP, now it's time for another edition of Batter Up. On today's Batter Up with JP, his special guest is a former Major League pitcher with stops along the way with the New York Yankees, Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals, Texas Rangers, San Diego Padres, and Minnesota Twins, with a lifetime 110 wins and an ERA that finished at 3.92. He holds the record for the second lowest ratio of base on balls for any starting pitcher to pitch in the major league since the 1920s, and the fifth lowest ratio for any pitcher since the 1800s. He's a former All-Star and has been a sports psychologist for the Boston Red Sox, San Francisco Giants, and Chicago Cubs. Let's welcome to Batter Up with JP, Bob Tewksbury.
Tukes, welcome on.
Hey, Jay, it's good to see you. Yeah, thanks. This is exciting. I am thrilled to be on.
Well, Tukes is an old teammate and a longtime friend, so it's nice to catch up with you. And you had an amazing major league career, but I know it wasn't an easy road to get there. And I'd like for our kids who are out there who listen to the show to hear about how you overcame adversity, and you ended up having such a stellar career. But there was a lot of bumps along the road, and a lot of perseverance on your part. And so without any further ado, I want to jump right into it. I'd like you to speak about your progression. You started when I played with you, you threw really, really hard, always had a great breaking ball. You get drafted, and then there's a few bumps along the way, and you recreate yourself. But I'd like you to tell your story, and as much as you want from the beginning to where you ended up.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, growing up in a small town in New Hampshire was, I went to a regional high school in Merrimack Valley, and this guy, Jeff Torborg's name came up with Scott Bradley in his podcast. My high school principal went to college at Rutgers and played with Jeff. And so when I was a senior in high school, I had a chance to sign with, was it Bill Enos, the old Red Sox? Yeah, I had a chance to sign with the Red Sox, turned it down because I had a scholarship to Rutgers University. But I came from a town with a blinking yellow light, Salisbury, New Hampshire. There were more people in my dorm than in my town when I got to Rutgers. So I was there for just the fall, and I dropped out of school and came back. And I worked at a Duncraft birdseed factory, doing mail order birdseed. And then one day I was putting the delivery down on the truck, and at the bottom of the ramp was my high school baseball coach, and whom I respect dearly. And he kind of looked up at me, and I looked down, and I thought, I got to get out of here. And that's how I ended up at St. Leo. I came down in January of that year, 79, I believe. And that's where we connected and played on the. I don't know if you remember this. If you were, I don't think you were on that team, but Kozak was another one of our teammates. So I played on the JV team, and we were the killer bees. We went down to Manatee Community College. I pitched 3 innings and gave up 20 runs, and 20 runs. And Murray Chase was there. Is it Murray Cook? Murray Cook.
Murray Cook.
Murray Cook was there, and they were hitting balls so hard, JP, the infielders were diving out of the way, and it was. But the next year, things got a little better. Jack Gillis was the coach, and it was really a good place for me. Got drafted in the 19th round by the Yankees, and went to Oneonta, where I played with Scotty and Mike Pagliarillo, and had a really good. And Scotty talked about the Yankee farm system. It was incredible at the time, and we had resources. We had coaches at every level, more than one coach, and it was great. And I had a good year there. I went to Fort Lauderdale, had a really good year. I pitched 188 innings that year, JP, and had 13 complete games in the Florida State League. And that doesn't happen now. And that's how you learn how to pitch. Anyway, I ended up having elbow surgery, and that's the first start. I came back, went to AA for 3 years, got brought up to Columbus in August of '85. Basically, I was 6-5 with a 4 ERA in Albany, and I think it was the Yankees' way of, Fisher cut bait. I'm 24 years old. What's this guy got? And I went off. I went 5-0. 44 innings, 5 walks, and got put on the roster. Went to big league camp, pitched 20 consecutive scoreless innings in camp, got named outstanding rookie. I was an offensive lineman by number. I was number 75 that spring, and ended up taking Phil Necro's number, which was number 35, which was great. And then so I got to New York. So I thought playing in Rutgers was playing in the Big Apple. I had a 1978 Mercury Zephyr, two-tone brown. I pulled into the parking lot with all these Mercedes and Beamers, and there's the hillbilly from New Hampshire. So anyway, but I made it to the big leagues and was up and down and get traded for Steve Trout, and at the All-Star break in '87. And then things. This is when things started to go a little crazy. I went to the Cubs. I had really some significant shoulder stuff going on. The Cubs wanted to shrink my shoulder back then. That was the new thing that they wanted to do. And I went and saw Dr. Pappas down at UMass Medical, and he performed surgery. And talk about a guy you believe in. Put your career in his hands. And so he did the surgery, and I pitched. He said, "Look, do all these exercises, and you'll be fine." And I did them religiously, and I pitched. So that would have been. I got back to the big leagues in '89 in September, and then didn't have my first full season until 1991. So the long and the short of it is. Pappas later told me at my retirement party, which I think you might have thrown in there was a bunch of old colleagues that threw in some snip. Dickie Scott was one of them, and you might have been in that footage too. But Dr. Pappas said he didn't think I'd ever pitch again but he told me that 8-10 years after the fact.
Right.
So that was the bump. To wrap it up, I got traded, I got released. I had 7 demotions, 2 surgeries. And I always tell players, JP, everyone's got a different path. And it has to be your path. And you can't compare yourself to other people. And you have to live in your path and do the best you can. And that's what I did. I did what I was supposed to do. I studied the game. I studied the opponent. I went from throwing 91 to 85 without a screen in the big leagues. that's what the definition of courage is, pitching in a big league game without a screen when you don't throw 95. So that was a long road, but I think it helped me get into my second career. Just the stuff that I was able to go through and be able to connect with players about today. And it's a
Well,
long road.
you've always been an extremely hard worker. I know that from playing with you. You were always you did everything you had to do. You paid attention. You were a cerebral guy. You thought about the game. You talked about the game. I mean, we've had so many conversations over the years, and everybody who's been around you says the same thing. And talk about the mental toughness of being able to push yourself through all those setbacks. Because once you got to St. Louis, I would look at you like Frank Tanana. You guys recreated yourself, and you pitched to your strengths, and your strength was command and control, and you you fed off the hitters what they were trying to do to you. You fed off that so well. I'm not even sure if it would someone would put you on a roster today. But
no.
It's just to
You're
me.
probably right.
But to me, it's what's missing in our game.
Yeah.
So talk about your perseverance, to get through all of that. What was the mental toughness like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in the movie The Officer and the Gentleman, Richard Gere goes, "I got no place else to go,"
Right.
and that's really I had no choice. It was to do this work or to. But I remember having the shoulder surgery, and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife Laura, was driving me to my buddy's house and in a sling, and my arm was killing me, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm ever going to pitch again. So the perseverance is just, you have good days, you have bad days, but when you love what you do, and Scotty talked about this again in his podcast, Peter Gammons loves the game. When you love what you do and you have a goal, a burning desire to achieve that goal, you'll do anything. And that's what it was. It was just a burning desire to be in the big leagues and to pitch healthy. And that when you have those two things, love and passion and a goal, that'll help you overcome anything.
So along the way, who would you say were some of the people who touched you and helped you along the way, both from a manager standpoint, a pitching coach's standpoint, a mental skills? I know Harvey Dorfman, who was a dear friend of both of ours. But speak to the people, because nobody gets to where they want to go without help.
Right. Yeah. No. My high school baseball coach, Dave Anderson, was prominent. Bob Norton, who was the assistant principal who went to school with Torborg, they were impactful. The coaches, Sammy Ellis, Mark Connor with the Yankees, Joe Coleman, the pitching coach when I got to St. Louis. Whitey didn't bring me up in '89. I was 13-5 in AAA, and they went to a 4-man rotation. He said I didn't throw hard enough, and I came up in September and won a game in the playoffs. Playoff hunt, we were chasing down the Cubs, and then when Whitey left, Joe Torre came in, and I mentioned it in my book that Joe Torre gave me permission to be successful. And there was a story, I was pitching at the Vet, and it was the 7th inning, and this is early 92, I think. And 7th inning of the game, guy on second, 1-run game. Joe comes out to the mound, and I think he's taking me out. That's what everyone does with me, right? That they're facing the order for the 3rd time. He doesn't throw hard, 7th inning. He's going to take me out. And I took myself out because he can't. Like I said, he came out. He came out to talk to me about what I was going to do, and instead, I thought he was coming to take me out. So he took me out. And Lee Smith came in. I love Lee Smith. Lee gave up a hit, and I got a no decision, and I can't remember if we won or lost the game. But I felt so bad that night because I basically kind of gave in that situation, like, oh, I must be out of the game. And Joe called me in his office the next day, and he called me Tweaksy, and he said, "Hey, Tweaks, you know why I took you out of that game yesterday?" And I said, "Yeah, I basically took myself up. When you asked me how I was doing, I don't even remember the answer that I gave you, but it wasn't one that would be strong in conviction." And he said these words. He said, "Tweaks, just you may not be a Glavin or Smoltz or Maddox or these guys, but I believe in you. I know what I'm going to get from you every time you go out to the mound. You're prepared. You won't beat yourself, and I believe in you." And I made the All-Star team that year, and the next year I won 17 games. And so those are the people you're talking about, that behind the scenes that give you permission, that give you encouragement. Um, I had Terry Steinbach, Steiny from your days or being with Oakland, and he, later in my career, last 2 years, he was in Minnesota, and he was a great guy to talk baseball with, and so I got to. This is a little bit off this, but I know you love a story. So last day of the season, and speaking of Steiny, last day of the season in Cleveland in 1997, we're out of the race. Pat Mears, a good shortstop's he's not playing. He's in the hot tub. This is where everyone's leaving after the game. We're out of there. We're flying home. So I go to Mears in the training room. I go, "Dude, what are you doing? You're not playing? I'm pitching today. You're not playing. You've been behind all my games." Yeah, I got a bad foot. And I go, "Look, here's the deal. I want you to call the game from the dugout." And he's like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, you're going to call the game. So Steiny's going to look in. You're going to give him signs. Fastball in, right ear, left ear, nose, chin." He goes, "All right, yeah, let's do that." So every pitch, Steiny's looking in the dugout, no one on base. And Tom Kelly goes, "What the hell's going on around here? Why Steiny keep looking in the dugout?" So because Mears was calling the pitches, I shook him off one time. I shook off, and to David Justice. Justice drove in a run. I pitched a complete game, gave up one run, and gave Mears the game ball. And he called every pitch the whole game. And Tom Kelly never knew. He was so mad.
Well, hey, just goes to show you how in touch Mears was with your game.
Exactly. Well, it just goes on. You mentioned this in your thing. The eyes tell you. Seeing the game through the eyes. So he saw. It wasn't a scouting report. It wasn't anything analytical. It was, what do you see? So anyway, I know I got off subject, but
No, those are good stories.
I love
they're
that
really
story.
good stories, and talk about. So you've mentioned this a few times. You didn't throw extremely hard, but you had amazing command and control. And how did you develop that? How did you work on that?
Mm-hmm.
How did you prepare for a game and how I'm going to set guys up? I'm sure you pitched backwards a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure knowing you knew every hitter in that lineup, what their strengths and weaknesses were. But speak to that, because we're in this day and age now where it's kind of ad nauseum. If you don't throw hard, and I keep fighting. Don't tell me sinkers don't play. Don't tell me. I wish guys threw curveballs. No hitters see curveballs anymore.
No.
But anyway, speak to how you went about thinking
Well,
and controlling the game.
It started in Salisbury, New Hampshire, a small town. I'd walk up to the schoolyard with I went to the neighbor's barn, and he had some sheetrock in there, and it was broken. So I took the sheetrock and I made a strike zone on the wall of the school, and I would pitch into this. I'd play my own game, pitching with myself against the wall. Always throwing rocks at trees, always trying to just, things to challenge that. And that just grew. And then when I got to high school, there was Bob Shaw, the old White Sox pitcher, wrote a book called Pitching. And I borrowed that from the library in 1978. I still have it. It's a little overdue.
Overdue.
But I devoured that. He talked about pitching mechanics. He talked about, grips and this and that. I just devoured it. Became a student of the game. JP, here, I know the listeners, if they're listening to this in a car like I did, they won't see this, but this is my journal. I kept a journal when I pitched of every hitter that that in my own scouting report, not what someone else did. I wanted my report, and I kept track of how many times I threw a first pitch strike, how many times I threw how many times I get the leadoff hitter out. You right here is the Astros. Craig Biggio, Hall of Famer, pitch away hard early, breaking balls out of the zone. Will chase breaking balls. Looks to go to right field with men on base. That was my scouting report, and I would write down things that I did well, things that I need to work on. I was always making notes of my mechanics. It's the little things aren't so little, JP.
No, and I'm going to stop you there for 1 second, because this is a pet peeve of mine, and I know we touched on it a couple of our conversations. Today, someone is telling players that, and I think we've lost the ability for the player to think about himself, to have the pushback, to be able to say to a guy, I know you think this, but in this case, I can double up with my curveball here, and I see what he's trying to do. And I think we're really dumbing down the major league player. It nauseates me to watch an infielder have to look on his wrist where to play a guy.
Well, I listened to that. Again, you guys, Scotty mentioned that. It just, the wristband stuff and all, it just drives me crazy, because they're being told, and that's happening in the youth level all the way up. So they're being conditioned. You talk about, Joe Torre talks about, and you mentioned this, the human element of the game. And they're turned into robots. Experienced pitchers, I got to the point in the big leagues where I could tell if someone adjusted their stance in the box and what that meant. Now, if I don't see that and I pitch to the report, I'm screwed, because it's information that I saw that I, could feel. But and the positioning, imagine Ozzie Smith being told where to play, or Willie Mays, take out your card, Willie Mays, and go do that. So I'm with you. I had a client in an organization I won't mention, but at AAA, the pitchers could not shake at AAA. Couldn't shake the catcher. Are you kidding me? How does that develop anything? College coaches calling pitches. How does that develop a player?
Who's more attuned to themselves than the player? He knows the situation. He's on the mound. How can a manager come out? I mean, he might see things here and there, I get it, but you know what's working for you that day. You know what you want to do. We've marginalized the thought of the major league player.
It's feel. There's no feel. It's just strictly analytical stuff. And I'm with you on it. And I guess maybe we're long in the tooth, but I think, so just back to the pitching thing, what they want to have a minimum inning of starting pitches. Well, what a revelation.
Yeah. Right.
What a revelation. They want to get back to keeping pitches. That's what pitching is.
Right.
It's not throwing hard, it's pitching. So now they're going to create this mandatory thing, which is just crazy. Hopefully it comes back around.
Well, I laugh at when, I've had this argument for the last 5 or 6 years. They tell me sinkers don't play. And I said, wait a minute, time out. I'm watching Logan Webb deal with a sinker, and you're going to take his best pitch away from him and tell him it doesn't work? And how about the guys with the power sinkers? Like we had Halladay, and it was a power sinker. You're going to take that away from him?
Yeah. Well, because they're taking – so here's the thing with that. They want the four-seam fastball for no contact and strikeouts, which increases pitch counts, which is not good. So the sinker gets an early out, early in the count. Why would you want to get rid of it early out and throw 3 fastballs up in the zone, 2 of which are fouled off? Then you throw a slider for a waste pitch. Now you're 5 pitches into the at-bat when you could have been 1.
So let me ask you this, because I know your career has taken a lot of twists and turns, and you went back to school, you got your education to become a mental skills coach, and you did it with Boston, you did it with San Francisco, you did it with Chicago. When when you talk to players about this mindset, like take control of your career, take control of what's the feedback?
Yeah, that's a great question. They go, yeah, you're right. But then so there's one thing to talk about. It's another to take action on it. And I mean, when I was with Boston, I remember Buckholz and maybe not so much Lester, but they hated the shake. They wouldn't shake Jason Veritek, and Tech would tell them to shake. Look,
Right.
you got the ball. You're thinking, that's fine. So taking responsibility for their careers, um, and that is a big thing for players because they haven't had to take responsibility for anything. They get rushed up. You mentioned that they get rushed up. They're not developed. I had 75 minor league wins. I had over 100 minor league decisions before I got up. And so and Scotty talked about this. With the Yankees, we tried to outperform our league to go to the league the next year, the next level. That's how you learn. Now they're skipping levels. They're underprepared. And I think, some of that is out of their control. It's the organization sets them up to fail in some instances. But I think that taking responsibility, and that's why players need to work on their mental game. And they need to take responsibility for that. And a lot of them don't. They'll spend all the time in the gym or at the cage, but they won't do the inner game work that needs to be done. And that's on the player's responsibility. And a lot of players won't utilize the team mental skills coaches now for whatever reason. A lot of it is.
Why do you think that is, Tukes?
Well, I think a lot of it is, and even though I was a former player, I still felt like because I worked for the team, the team, you're a team employee. How can we trust? And then the instances of stories where somebody might have been befriended or the trust was broken, and that trickles down. Like you can't trust any mental skills coach.
Right.
But I think that's what happens there, and I think it's unfortunate because there's a lot of mental skills coaches that will definitely be of help to the players should they be more open to it. I remember, and you might have been there. We saw each other down in Manchester when you were still with the Jays, I think. And I did a talk to the AA team, the Portland Sea Dogs, before the game. And I went in and I said, how many people here are playing up to their potential? Show of hands. No, 25 guys, right? Typical AA locker room, peanut butter, jelly, paper cups, dirt, equipment everywhere, hot,
Yeah.
And no one raised their hand. I said, okay, there's three aspects of performance. There's physical, fundamental, and mental. So with a show of hands, how many people aren't playing up to their potential because of something physical? Two guys raised their hand. They're both hurt.
Yeah.
Same thing. How about fundamentally? One guy raised his hand. And I said, all right, how many people are not playing up to their potential because of something mental? And they all raised their hand. And I said, what are you doing about it? So that's the responsibility we're talking about. The players that really are engaged in their career will do whatever it takes to be the best possible version of themselves. And that's oftentimes looking in. I tell the guys, change happens from the inside out. Change doesn't happen when you hit 20 home runs and now you're good.
Right.
Change happens when you figure out a way to compete on those days that instead of an 0 for 4, you have an 0 for 3 with a walk. You battle through those things.
Did you find that big league players were a little bit more receptive to you than maybe the minor league guys?
No, I think the minor league guys were more receptive because they were wanting to get to the big leagues.
Right.
I think there's a tendency, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a tendency for coaches even, if a player's in the big leagues, all of a sudden they can't teach him.
Right. That blows my mind.
Oh,
Blows my mind.
the other day I'm watching the Red Sox game against Baltimore. There's a guy on second, base hit to right. The guy throws it in the air to third, in the air to home. And and the batter runner goes to second, and I'm like, all you can do is you're not going to throw this guy out. Number one,
No,
no one can throw from the outfield anymore.
no.
They don't do infield, outfield. They don't, it's just, it's ridiculous. But that's just, you get me on these. I love going down these rants here because I haven't talked baseball in a long time, but I'm fired up right now.
Yeah, no, and it's I've been doing a lot of the games on TV for Nesson at the AAA level, and
Yeah, I heard that.
I'm watching the games, and I'm like, is anybody paying attention here? God, nobody. You can make book on this. First and third, nobody throws to second base anymore. It's like a high school little league game. They just give up second base. They don't have the ability to throw down and throw back. And then you'll appreciate this. I think it's a byproduct of pitchers don't know how to hold runners anymore
100%.
because of the rule. So the runners are taking advantage of that. Once I know they threw over twice, he's not going to throw over a third time. So my lead increases. And I actually had this conversation with a manager who I won't mention. I said, hey, did you ever think of pitching out? Did you ever think of throwing over twice? It's a 2-1 count, maybe pitch out because he knows you're not going to throw over. It might be a running count.
Yeah,
He looked at me like I was talking Chinese. And I was like, and this guy was a big league manager. And I'm like, so the fundamentals you see nightly just absolutely just blow you away. And I think goes back to the point you made. We've rushed these guys to the big league so much that they don't have any time to learn a lot of these things.
And then when they get there, it's like, for the most part, I'm in the big leagues, the learning stops instead of, that's what was so great about, in 2013, I was with the Sox most of the year, and Mookie Betts rookie year, and Arnie Baylor would take Mookie out and work in the outfield every day. He won a Gold Glove and invited Arnie to the, so there are some exceptions. Mookie's a outlier in that regard, but and I think you're right. I think AAU baseball is now what the major league is. It's just, it's just not the same game.
I used to tell the minor leaguers when you had a chance to speak to them. I used to say, look at 100 ground balls a day, 50 ground balls a day, whatever it is, your sides that you're throwing, your blocking ball, whatever it is, it can get mundane, and it could be like, why do I have to do this? What I want you to think about is it's the bottom of the ninth, and Roy Halladay's on the mound, and it's a 1-run game, and that ball's going to be hit to you. Are you ready to field that ball because you've taken 100 ground balls and you're ready to make that play? Because it doesn't show up when it's 95 degrees in instructional league, but it shows up when 50,000 people are watching. And then you got to walk in the dugout and you got to look at Roy Halladay and say, I didn't make that play.
Yeah. Right.
And that was my speech every year to the minor leaguers.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's so true. And that's why you do it, because the repetition, you have to have the reps to make the play when it happens. And, anyway, nothing against, big league coaches. I'm not saying that coaches don't teach still and that they don't call people out when they're supposed to. I'm just giving the example of a lot of times when players get to the big leagues, the stuff that in the minor leagues you'd be yelled at about doesn't happen.
Yeah. And I think a lot of managers are young today. They don't want to challenge the player.
Yeah. Yeah. No one, well, the game's been neutered. The fact that, and this is my pet peeve, JP, I don't like the instant replay. I don't like the call at second. You talked Peter Gammons. Utley went in the second hard. The guy for the Mets turned the double play the wrong way, so they changed the rule.
Right.
So, and I'll tell you, this is my soapbox. I'll tell you why I don't like instant replay. Because they're trying to make everything fair, and life's not fair. Baseball's not fair.
Wow.
And so now, that's not fair. Look at the replay. Make sure we get it right. No, part of why you play sports is to deal with adversity, is to deal with shit that happens that's, not in your favor, that's out of your control. How do you respond to it? That's gone. Right. No more managers go out and argue to stick up for your players. No one's going in the second hard because someone got knocked down. those are the little things. So why do we need to create this fair thing when sports are supposed to teach you how to deal with unfairness? That's gone.
No. So I'm going to switch gears on you because I know having you on, I ask all the pitching guys this, and I want to get your input. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but how do you feel about all the arm injuries in our game? And what I think I know the answer to this, but what do you think we can do?
Well, all those started to come up, with more increased youth sport participation, sport specialization. It's not only it's baseball pitchers, but you look at football, people that specialize in football or basketball. There's injuries in any sport because of overuse, and then the big buildup with being big, strong, throwing it as hard as you can. Look at Jacob deGrom is an unbelievable pitcher. 2 Tommy Johns. Syndergaard, unbelievable. He's not even playing now. I don't think. Maybe he's somewhere. But, so I think it's a byproduct of development, and your body can't take that torque. It's not designed to throw a baseball, number one. It's not designed to throw it 100 miles an hour. This kid for Pittsburgh is unbelievable, but I just hope that he doesn't run into something because, he's a big, strong kid, but I think that's the cause, in search of velocity starting at a young age. You look at the kids that go to Driveline and they're doing these big, running up to the thing and throwing a ball. You don't pitch like that.
No.
And we used to, you develop arm strength by throwing a ball, playing long toss, not by trying to throw a ball as hard as you can just to get a number. What can be done about it? I don't know. I think that, the whole, if baseball has to create a rule that major league pitchers need to go 6 innings, then you're going to get people that can pitch, like Bronson Arroyo. He couldn't sign now. Bronson Arroyo is an unbelievable pitcher. So you have to learn how to pitch, and you have to, not develop those power arms that are in the bullpen that they're just replaceable. So if you're a young kid with a power arm, they're going to just ride you until they can't ride you, and then your career's over.
Right.
And because you're not designed to do that. So I'm not sure what can be done about it. I think focus more on command, focus on pitching, and away from I'm all for strength and conditioning and, the stuff that you need to do that. But, I've got minor league clients that are like, yeah, they said I don't throw hard enough. The guy throws 94. I'm not throwing hard. I got to increase my velocity. His strike percentage is poor. He doesn't have a breaking ball. I mean, just getting back to the roots of development and throwing away the velocity.
I was talking to Jim Palmer about this, and I asked all the guys who had good curveballs, and you had a very good curveball. Why have we taken the curveball out of our game? Hitters don't see it enough. I've seen so many big league hitters freeze on curveballs this year, a good curveball. And it was I know what they're going to tell you. It's a hard pitch to control. It's who could teach it, whatever it is. But I think we've lost a pitch in our game.
Well, yes. Look at Doug Drabeck. Doug was a teammate in the minor leagues, went to Pittsburgh, won the Cy Young Award in 1990. First pitch of the game he threw was a curveball. He would start people off with curveballs because, A, they're not swinging. You steal strikes by throwing an off-speed pitch early in the count. No one's going to swing. So, I think and again, I'm not up on, following it day to day. I hardly watch baseball. I talk to my clients about it, but it's all spin rate and lateral movement, right? And hard lateral movement, whether it's the, a four-seam rise or the cutter or the slider. And that pitch is not only, it's an off-speed pitch that changes direction, that has depth and sets up other pitches. So I don't know I think it can be thrown, it can be taught to be thrown, but it's not a power pitch. what's the hardest breaking ball you've seen? Might be 84 miles an hour or something, but you can throw a slider, 93. Um, and that 84 would be, mine was 72, 74, and it was perfect speed.
Yeah. And guys change speeds off their breaking balls too. Like Drabex was a little shorter because he had a little
Mhm.
bit of a shorter arm action. Ronnie Darling had a shorter arm, but some guys make it a little bigger. Frank Tanana, Scott Sanderson, that big loopy one.
The big
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I'm just going to change your eye level. Then I'm going to speed you up with a little tighter. I don't know. I think we're missing an advantage for someone along the way.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I'm in that boat. And look, if I didn't have a curveball, I wouldn't have been able to pitch in the big leagues.
Well, you had a good one. So tell us what you're doing now. Tell us about how you switched your careers, and obviously, we talked about the baseball part of it, but tell us what you're doing with yourself now.
Yeah, well, I stopped playing in '98 and then became a consultant with the Red Sox for 3 years. And then I went back to graduate school and got a master's in sports psychology and counseling. Started the Red Sox mental skills program in '04. Uh, did that through it was fortunate. I had Lester, Buchholz, Pedroia, Ellsbury, Jed Lowry, Euclid. Talk about some great players, and most of them I had in the minor leagues, and so that's where my strongest relationships were formed with those players at that time. And then later on when Rich Hill was there and Andrew Miller, they both speak in my book about their challenges. And for anyone that's listening, 90% Mental, it's on Amazon, you can get it. Rich Hill, Lester, Andrew Miller, I'll share their stories about their struggle, and I think could be really insightful. But so, and then I worked, through the minor leagues, got work, and then when those guys got to the big leagues, I started spending more time in the big leagues, and I was there until 16, and then didn't get renewed, and went to the Giants. This, but a lot of people, Brian Sabian, the very successful GM of the Giants, was my American Legion baseball coach. And, and yeah, that was fun. So it was good to reconnect with him, but, be over there when Boch was there, and Boch was my manager in San Diego. So that was fun. And then didn't get renewed there, went to the Cubs. In part because Lester, I was available. Unfortunately, Ken Revisa, who was working for the Cubs in that capacity, then passed away suddenly, and so I filled his shoes for a couple of years, and then COVID came, and I came home. So now I have my own practice right here in this office. It's part-time art studio, part-time office. And I work with the University of Maine women's basketball team. I worked with St. Leo, St. Leo baseball the last 3 years, and now Rick Odette has gone to
The enemy.
Florida Southern. Yep. So I'm gonna talk with him tomorrow about maybe doing some work with them. I've had some pro golf clients. I've worked with Tufts hockey team. I've worked with Bates baseball, and then I have some minor league clients, mostly college kids, and I try to keep my practice to the college and professional player. Not that the younger kids don't need it or couldn't learn from it, but I just want to focus on the elite player and make a difference. My sweet spot's the minor league player that's struggling to get through to how does he persevere? How does he make it? And that's what I love to talk about.
And you worked with the Maine women's basketball, right?
Maine woman, yeah, the Maine Black Bears. Brian Butterfield, his dad, I saw his picture, old Butter. Bordick is up on the wall. Stump Merrill's up on the
Yeah.
wall there.
So let me ask you a question. Women, men, what do you find? I find women are more receptive to They're better free throw shooters than men. They listen to, they do everything fundamentally sound,
Yeah,
and guys do everything fundamentally wrong. So
yeah.
that's just an observation.
All I know is that women, they're, and I've worked with my daughters when she went to Wheaton College. I worked with the lacrosse team there. I've worked. Um, the women athletes are so much more fun to work with because they're open. They will just tell you, and they'll be emotional. I last year I had a couple of players that came in and they broke down and cried and they're like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, I've had a daughter. I know what this is like. It's okay. It's okay. So I love, Amy Vachon and her staff have done an unbelievable job. But she played at Maine. She was on the team that beat Stanford in the NCAA's first round. She's got an unbelievable program, and I'm so lucky to be part of it. I just love working with the women's sports, and to do something other than baseball too is really refreshing. Yeah.
Well, Tukes, you've been awesome. I don't want to take up most of your day, but thanks for coming.
I can talk all day, Jay. What else you want to talk about? No, hey, you can't take the kid out of Worcester. You still got your Worcester accent.
Oh yeah. We're all we're all New Englanders, but I just want to thank you for taking the time. We'll get you on again at some point, and you look great. Good to see you. Good health. All the best, and stay in touch.
Yeah, Jay. Thank you, man. And you've always been there. If I need anything, I can reach out to you. I appreciate that. It's great to have a long-standing friendship, and this show's great. Good luck with it going forward, and I'll keep listening. I'm following you. So
hey, once a teammate, always a teammate, right?
That's right. Absolutely. All right, buddy. Take care of yourself.
All right, Tukes. Take care, buddy. Thanks.
See ya.
What a fascinating interview that was with Bob. That was great, JP.
Yeah, Bob's has always been a cerebral guy, a deep thinker, loves the game, was a student of the game. Obviously, like I said, he was a former teammate of mine, but has been a lifelong friend, and nice to see how his career off the field has taken off as well. So I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it certainly was. And I mean, the amount of guests that you've brought on in all different facets of the game. I mean, from the agents to the Peter Gammons of the world, to the ex-players, to the baseball psychologists like Bob. I mean, what a just a complete, complete amount of guests in so many different areas of baseball.
That's what
really
we said,
cool.
John. We said we wanted this show to be well-rounded. We wanted to introduce different aspects of the game, what goes on maybe behind the scenes, and we still have a lot of good guests coming up as we go. And as we continue to grow the show, I think more and more viewers are going to be really entertained and really educated along the way, which is our goal.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for future episodes here, and we're going to wrap it up for this edition of the Brushback. And don't forget JP social media, and I'm sure it's going to be really active with the Ohtani message that you sent out, because we do want to hear from you. I mean, all you got to do on JP's X account or on the Instagram is leave something in the comments, because this is out everywhere now. And I'm sure, JP, you'd like to hear what the fans and the listeners and viewers have to say.
Yeah, I really do, because I think there's a lot of intelligent baseball people who listen, and I want to get their input because I want to see what their thoughts are, and I'd like to hear what their ideas are. And I think the great thing about baseball is when you're talking baseball, you get educated and you find out someone else's thoughts, and I think it makes for a healthier, better game.
Yeah, absolutely does. So if you want to follow JP on X and Instagram, it's simply at RICCIARDI JP. And don't forget, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. Check out the YouTube channel as well, because all the episodes are up there. And if you're listening, especially on Apple, give it a 5-star review. Write a review for us. That really helps in what they call the algorithms. And this show is really getting a lot of critical acclaim out there, and that's because of this expert that's here each and every week, my friend JP, for so many years. And JP, we'll be back next week with another show. So until we do that, this is John Arezzi for JP. Have a great week, everyone.